One more. Light it hard. So this is Muriel and Bill Dafoe telling their story tonight, as you all know. And I just want to turn it over to them and let them get started. So I think, I hear that Bill's going to take everything except the romance.
That'd be the most interesting part.
Well, might be the rated R.
I'm beginning to blush.
It's good. It's good for the camera. Are we all set?
We're good. Thank you. Yeah, we're rolling.
You're on.
I got started off on the wrong foot tonight because I was visiting here and I said, my daughter Barbara, they were asking about the family, and I said, my daughter Barbara was the smartest of our children. Just then, Nancy went by. I said, except Nancy. But anyway, about July 21st, 1917, the bells were ringing in Wautoma, Wisconsin. The German church, the other German church, the Norwegian church, the Catholic church, and the Methodist church. The bells were ringing merrily all long, 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 and the occasion was my arrival. And what had happened was my dad and mother had 6 daughters. And then suddenly, I made it. So that was why they rejoiced. Well, anyway, then when I was about 2 years old, we had a tragedy. I don't know who left open the gates, but somebody did. And I went down one flight of stairs and down the basement stairs and landed with my head on the concrete. And that explains But anyway, my dad picked me up. I was totally limp. And he said, he's gone, he's gone. But I guess that wasn't here today. And it was fortunate because I might have had a subdural hematoma. And at that time, in that community and most every other place, exploring for subdural hematomas was extremely dangerous. There's no chemotherapy or anything else. And the talent wasn't there, so I was glad nobody diagnosed me with a subdural hematoma, at least not somebody. But then I grew up next to my neighbor, and he was the richest man in the community. He was a saloon keeper by the name of William Belter, very large German. And he was also, in addition to being a saloon keeper, he was very much of a church man. He was very loyal to the church, and he was very dedicated to church. And he gave generously to the church, although he was himself a very penurious man. And he lived with his...
that word, Dad.
With his...
She's not as smart as
he lived with his niece, Ida Tone. And she was short and broad and loving. And I would go over there practically every day since I was able to make the grade, toddling over in the snow and to see them. And this grew and had a big part on my life cycle, I guess. And I used to, when Mr. Belter got tired of having this kid around there, he had a secret way of getting rid of me. And when he was tired, he'd say, well, now, how are you, Hans Beetle? Wow, that's a dirty name, I'm sure. I was about 4 years old. I said, how are you, Hans Beetle? Oh, well, I'm not a Hans Beetle. I'm not a Hans Beetle, and I go home. Well, anyway, I grew up like every other kid in Wautoma. I We had a trout stream running right through the middle of the street in the downtown section, full of trout. There was an old grist mill grinding away, and the flour and so forth right there. And back of it was a huge mill pond where there were lots of northern pike and bass and perch and everything else, and bullheads, catfish. And of course, I loved to go fishing for those catfish. And I'd bring them home, and Mom would say, "Oh, that's wonderful. We won't have to buy any meat today," because there was quite a big family, and the salary of the professor at the Watoma High School group was not tremendous. It was very, very short because everybody was quite poor in the whole region. And so that's the way it went along. Well then, I decided that maybe the place for me would be to go to Madison, the University of Wisconsin. And so we didn't have any money. The tuition was very expensive. I think it was $19 or $20 for the semester. That was big money in those days, $19 or $20. So how would you earn that? Well, anyway, we managed to earn that tuition and got in there. And then there was a question of how you were going to be fed and lodged while you were a student there. And this was in the Depression then, about 1933. Nobody had any money, including us. So we had a Three Squares Club in the basement of the church of the Methodist Church, which was right across from the chemistry building, right on campus. And the far-seeing minister said, "Well, you can have that. We'll give you a place for you to serve your meals yourself. There won't be any rent on that. But the proviso is, if you do that, you have to go to church every Sunday. You have to appear there. That's part of the deal." So our meals were very good. The charges were excessive. If they got over 31 or 33 cents per week, then the people would say, "Well, if it goes much higher, I'm going to have to quit school because I can't pay that amount of money." Now, that sounds fabulous, questionable, but it was true. And at that time, people were sleeping in the heating channels that were scattered throughout the campus because they weren't able to afford living in a home, which probably cost about $2 a week or something like that. So they slept in these. Well, anyway, after that, we got through that section. And also my mother, she canned with a pressure cooker a lot of vegetables in order to take them to the Three Squares Club in order to get that credit for our payment to the group. And at that time, you could get a full quart solid of tomatoes for 8 cents because we had to compete with the commercial people. They'd say, "Well, we're not going to pay you 8 cents a quart for tomatoes when we can get it on the open market for that price." So, but everybody had a good time anyway, and we had many different personalities there, which was refreshing. And gradually it grew and grew until after a while it became quite large, and they hired our own cook. But anyway, after that came medical school, and I went to the University of Wisconsin for 2 years. And I had a 4-year appointment, but I thought I'd rather go into surgery and rather than medicine, which was especially strong at the University of Wisconsin, versus the surgical program. So I went to Harvard for 2 years, and that was a whole new experience. I started out there, and it was in the midst of a hurricane, a tornado, I think it was, tornado. And it took me 2 days in order to get from Madison, Wisconsin to Boston area. And on the way I met some guy, and he said, "Where are you going to sleep tonight?" I said, "I don't know where I'm going to sleep. No idea." He said, "Well, I have a place at Massachusetts Institute of Technology." He says, "My roommate won't be there. If you want, you can have a cot there." Not a pot, but a cot. So I accepted his offer, and things went along. And so then at that time, the tuition at Harvard Medical School was $500 a semester.
A siesta.
A semester. A semester. They're married here. A semester.
Like the fellow
I approve.
Go ahead.
Cement. He always said cement down south instead of cement. Cement.
Oh, you're really much of a gardener. You're the only gardener here. They say cement. We say cement now.
Anyway. Where was I?
$500 tuition at Harvard.
Anyway, I was there, and of course, I hadn't been there more than about 3 weeks, and I ran out of money. So what did I do about that? So I went up to the dean's office there and talked with a lady there, and she said, "Well," she said, I know what I'll do. I'll send you over to the South Department at Boston City Hospital." And so that meant free meals, and delicious meals, because we, as clinical workers there, were given the same meals as the chief, who was Dr. Place, who was well known over the whole country as an outstanding person in contagious diseases. And at that time, there was tremendous amounts of contagious disease. We'd have wards that were filled with 100 scarlet fever cases. And the only treatment we had for that then was serum. We had to give these little kids that came in intravenous injection with a tube this long, with a good-sized needle on it, giving it to the squalling kids who was scared to death because they came from a home where rats ran loose, you know, in the homes, and they bit a lot of the children that they came in, and they got just a little bread and milk and a little cookie or some very mild food, and they thought they were in heaven, you know, to get that amount of food. So you could see what the conditions were at that time. Well, anyway, after I had that and had graduated from Harvard Medical, I went to Faulkner Hospital.
Yay!
And so at Faulkner Hospital, it was a place that was highly respected, beautiful hospital. Most of the staff were from Massachusetts General and from Peterbilt Brigham Hospital. And the local doctors that were in that particular area of Jamaica Plain. So I was there for a year, and after that year, I went to Boston City Hospital, which was just up my alley, because that's what was a very difficult position to get as not on the staff, but we had a medical group, we had a surgical group, we had 5 divisions on the surgical side. Number 2 and number 4 was Harvard services. So I was on the Harvard service, and eventually I worked up the way to be